as we know, the word landscape was first used 1600 years ago. It's a German and Old English word, and it meant a geographical region, a piece of land. It was then taken up in the 16th century by a group of Dutch painters, and they became the landscape painters. And that was all about what you could see with your eye and paint these wonderful natural vistas. Now, of course, because the Netherlands is such a flat country, a landscape had a small dimension to it. In the 20th century, landscape was taken up by geographers as a unit of territory. The problem with that was, though, how do you define it? What is the unit of a landscape? Is it hectares of land? Is it numbers of people? Is it tons of soil? Is it numbers of species living within that defined area? And we've grown to understand and use a landscape-based approach, where we are nesting by physical parameters across small-scale farms, communities, subnational jurisdictions, right up to national level, and even transboundary global issues, as well as social issues, because it is people in the landscape and the difference of that we're trying to make a difference to, both in the way they act and the returns from those individual landscapes. And so to us, the landscape approach is not a noun. Landscape is a noun, and landscape approach is an adjectival noun. We're trying to get beyond that to landscape action. It is about land use. It is about better land management. It is about land use planning for priority benefits and advantages to people. And of course, it's not always going to be a win-win-win situation. We will have trade-offs. We need to understand those trade-offs between biophysical elements and also social elements, even where there is a conflict. But we measure our world largely in gross domestic product, GDP, a metric that was established after the Great Depression in the USA. It was a crisis. We now have a new crisis, an environmental crisis, where we need metrics around how we manage our land to be able to monitor that, track, and target certain interventions. Many of those interventions will be agricultural, because that is the lands and the landscapes that feed people. And so the fundamental question of landscapes is this landscape improving? Is it staying the same, or is it declining? And how do we measure that? What are the 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces of information that gives us maybe 70 or 80% confidence in decisions that can be taken, in new investments that can be made by governments, by private sector, by individual actors? And it is that awareness raising, that understanding leading to a change in behavior, leading to a change in investments, leading to a change in market conditions that will then lead to those positive impacts, more sustainably managed resources, better equity, greater understanding of the role of natural processes. Remember, it takes 100 years to build 2 centimeters of topsoil. That can be lost in a single rainfall event. So understanding how much organic carbon is in that soil, understanding the way in which it glues the sand and the silt and the clay together, making that soil a sponge rather than a sieve. So when it rains, it retains water. It can go and cope with periods of lack of rainfall or poor drought. It can cope with those greater environmental extremes that we're seeking to prevent. Yeah, so one of the key areas where we're trying to tie the social and the ecological, the biofuel elements together, is in payments and rewards for environmental services. So we're looking at rewards and returns for carbon, for water, and for biodiversity. And whether we look at those singularly or bundled together, the human dimension is very important. The stewards of our land, the small-scale farmers, the subnational district managers, these are the ones who need the options available, the choices, and support in taking decisions that reinforce these. Of course, there can be conflicts between, for instance, different water users. Should an upstream water user use all of the water or dam the river, preventing people downstream from using that? But the way in which people upstream manage their watershed, manage those resources, will also affect whether there's extreme flooding events or a long-term seasonal flow of the water in the river. And those people that change their behavior or do something new should be rewarded for that. We don't bring into our balance sheet the natural capital. It's invisible. We take it for granted, and we've got to stop doing that. We've got to internalize that in our supply chains and understand the value of that. I'll give you an example from the Amazon. Very good estimates of the return from cattle ranching in the Amazon. $16.6 billion per year. That's the revenue side of it. But we forget to charge the cost side of destruction of forest, which is over $300 billion per year. So that difference, that ratio of almost 20 to 1, is something we need to pay much more attention to. And sadly, in our world, we haven't reconciled the difference between cost, price, and value. Let's look at carbon dioxide, carbon sequestration as an example. Carbon is the most variable element there is, the most variable commodity in the world. At one end, we have $50 per ton as firewood. And at the top end, we have $100 billion a year, $100 billion per ton as diamonds. Now, we weren't content with that such wide range from $50 to $100 billion. We had to create something called atmospheric carbon. And we put a price on it of about $2 per ton. So we're really stretching the market and demand and the price of that. When the real value of emitting a ton of carbon dioxide is something more like $80 per ton, we're only paying $2. You can see that no farmer would be interested in carbon farming, in doing something just for the carbon. The carbon has got to be that reinforcing mechanism. You plant an improved mango seedling, you're boosting the carbon on your farm, you're building organic matter in the soil, but primarily to the farmer, you're increasing your income and you're increasing nutrition. So it's an added co-benefit, an added environmental co-benefit. And there are similar co-benefits that can arise from biodiversity and also from water. So when we look at biodiversity, should farmers just grow one type of tree, one type of annual crop, or should it be a variety? And that diversity makes a real difference. And getting across the message that diversity makes a difference, and we can stimulate that if we can particularly have capital inputs to change that. Because with any new practice, there is often a decline in revenue for the farmer in the first 2 or 3 years. So with microfinance, with incentives, with subsidies, can we trigger that change in behaviour, trigger that enterprise to things that is reinforcing and positive for the farmer, reinforcing positive for the environment, and supports a more sustainable supply chain.